This week on New to You, Lost and Forgotten, Part 4, Finding Vivian. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the New to You Show. We're finishing up our Lost and Forgotten series with the fourth, with Jules's pick. I'm one of your hosts, John Holt. With me this week,
Keith Allen Vincent. How you doing? Who are you?
I'm Julien Kitch.
Oh, bonjour, Julien. And our special guest,
Kristen Nicole Sherman.
Oh, thank you for joining us again. It's been so nice having you
It's
here.
a pleasure to be back. It's a pleasure.
So the New to You Show is a cultural review
Informative
podcast.
cultural review.
We really just try to bring things to people's attention, things that maybe have
We like to
slipped from the
shine our light on undiscovered treasures.
Yeah. And just maintain, like, maybe this has fallen from the collective consciousness. Maybe we just want to bring it out into the light.
Into the fore.
And, you know, it may not be new to you, but maybe
It's new to you.
it's time to rediscover it. So we're a podcast of discovery and rediscovery. Welcome to the New to You Show.
Thank you for being here.
Our topic, Lost and Forgotten, has had 3 great picks up to this point, and Julien is going to follow us up with our final pick. Jules, why don't you take it
Jules,
away?
you had something really interesting that you wanted to talk about today, and I would just love it if you could enlighten us and tell us your story.
Secretly somewhat know about the sun, the moon, the stars.
The auction house is across the street from my home. I found this box loaded with negatives. I won it for, I think it was $380.
The history of street photography is currently being rewritten.
Vivian Mayer.
Vivian Meyer.
Vivian Mayer?
Exhibitions in New York and LA.
Is Finding Vivian Mayer. It's a documentary film
Cool,
from
okay.
2013.
Documentary,
And
is that the format like where they they try to tell real stories using real footage and real world events?
Real stuff.
sometimes.
Is that shit real? Let's get real.
Is this like when they try to tell a real story using real stuff?
Yeah.
And like,
like real? Like real?
Anyway, let's find Vivian Mayer. Meyer?
Meyer.
It may
Meyer.
be Mayer. It may be Meyer.
just depends on which kid you talk to that she
true.
governed.
That's true.
The ones whose brain she did not addle. Spoiler alert.
This film's for those of you avid listeners of the New to You podcast and who heard our first episode in the Lost and Found series,
Forgotten.
Forgotten
Lost
Silver,
and Forgotten.
Lost and Forgotten, and with John's pick, Forgotten Silver, which is a mockumentary. This documentary starts in a very similar fashion. A man named John Maloof. He's a young man, like in his 20s, and he's always he's at an auction and he decides to bid on this trunk full of photographs.
Rain Man style.
Did he
Rain Man
know?
style.
Did he know that there were? Did he know that there were? I think it was just a trunk, and he didn't even know.
I think it was even a trunk. It was like a box.
No, I thought it was a trunk.
I don't think
No,
it was
no.
a box. I think it
No,
was a
he
crate.
knew what was in it, though.
Yeah,
Yeah, he knew what
Oh,
was
he
in it.
knew it was
Because he was trying to
That's
piece
right, he was making
together
a
photographs for
a history book
Yeah.
that he was going to
No,
write.
these were
Yeah.
because he said in the there's 2 sets. Like, sorry to jump to this, but he says he buys a box and then they show like a box in a closet as like a reenactment or whatever.
Mhm.
And then later he goes to the storage unit and that's where he gets the steamer.
Got
storage
it.
unit.
So he finds a little thing with all these negatives,
And
and
a
then he
bun-
finds some people, and they're like, well, "Yeah, we've been keeping her stuff in the storage unit for a long
Precisely.
time."
And
yeah.
but other people bought boxes too that same
And then
day.
he bought those.
Oh,
And
he bought
sought
those
them
from
out
them.
and bought those boxes from them.
Got
Yeah,
it.
yeah. So it was initially this was in Chicago.
Referred to often as the Windy City
Mm-hmm.
because of its politicians being proclivity. That's why.
And
Anyways.
if Trump is to believe the most dangerous place on the planet,
So, anyways, he finds this trunk full of negatives, and he scans them, and and he basically discovers that, like, wow, these are amazing photographs, and so he becomes curious about who made these photos, and he also starts showing them around to other people, other experts, because he's not like a photography expert or anything, but he recognizes that there's definitely talent there, and it's confirmed when he shows it to other people that it's definitely somebody with an eye. So he sort of gets obsessed with, because it starts his journey of trying to discover who is this person, and then he starts collecting her work from others, and just starts trying to piece together her story. And so it was this woman named Vivian Mayer, who worked as a nanny most of her life, and so the film kind of traces back the journey he went on to kind of piece together her story. But I think they also manipulate the timeline a little bit to kind of reveal information in a way that's like more intriguing. And so slowly throughout the film, you end up little by little learning more and more about this sort of mysterious, very private, very very interesting person. She was definitely like a character, and it's fascinating. And her work is just incredible. Like she's a street photographer, and I think it's up there with some of the best. I mean, you can actually go to they have a lot of her work up online, and you can just go and peruse the lifetime's worth of stuff that she's got, and it's incredible. So the interesting part is she never really showed her work during her lifetime, and most of the people in her life didn't even know. Like, they knew she took pictures on it all the time, but they never really saw them, or it was just a hobby to them. And I think she was a bit of a hoarder as well. Like later in life, especially, like, you find out she just started collecting all kinds of junk and newspapers and all this stuff. And I think this was her way, in a way she would kind of hoard memories. Like, I think her photographs were another form of hoarding, because she had tons of undeveloped, like, boxes and boxes and boxes of undeveloped negatives.
What decades are we talking about with her?
That's
From like
that's a
the
good question.
40s.
From the 40s to the 80s?
Yeah.
Was it?
Yeah.
Well, and she passed away like just a few years,
years
before this
before.
guy found this stuff.
Well,
Yeah.
it wasn't even like a few months, because didn't he
Yeah,
find the
he
obituary?
found the obituary after buying the
So
box,
a few years
according
ago
to the story.
or something, or when was he making the discovery?
Well, the documentary came out in 2014. He discovered the box in 2007, and she died in 2009. Wait, that's crazy.
But he started looking into her more.
Yeah, I guess because I think it took a while. Like, his
So that's
interest
not made
kinda
very
grew.
clear in the film.
No, it's
No.
not.
Yeah.
Yeah, again, they kind of fuzz over the timeline. Yeah, that's interesting.
Well, you kind of have to for recency reasons when you're making this documentary. You want it to
Yeah.
seem like you're discovering these things as they're filming almost.
And I think they kind of kept the clip going, but I think it took him longer to put this together than the
Right.
film kind
Right,
of
longer and travel
implied.
and all that.
Yeah, and I think also his interest kind of grew as he went along, and after a while, like, he was trying to get museums interested, because, like, because he started collecting all of her stuff and putting it all in one place, like, it just became overwhelming. He just had too much stuff, and he thought it deserved, like, more attention, but he couldn't get any of the traditional museums to care and stuff. Eventually, he found like he started posting the work online, and it garnered a lot of attention, and then from there he was able to do a lot of stuff with it, and I'm sure he's made some money from it as well, which is a little bit.
Well, I think he was definitely at the end selling her prints. He
Yeah.
said, but that's to fund more research and
Yeah.
stuff like that, according to him.
There's also,
But
like-
I'm imagining he has put out a book by now, right?
Yeah, he's put out a book. He's made this documentary.
Yeah.
Like, I think.
There's been a little bit of controversy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, so part of the issue is, as you uncover more of her, like, everyone says that she would have hated this whole process, this whole thing, because she was just a super private person. But at the same time, she had talked at some point about making some prints. Like, I think she recognized the value of her work, and maybe this is the ideal way for her
I think
to
that's
show
where they
her work.
landed, where it's just
Discover.
like she wanted people to find this body of work, I think. But, now that she's doesn't have to worry about it kind of feeling like invasive to her privacy, then it's fine,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
what artist doesn't kind of dream of that? Like, we'll show them.
Yeah. And but also what's interesting, so throughout the film, so she was a nanny, and they interview a lot of the families that whom she was a nanny for, and that's the part that they just sort of reveal little by little, and you find out, first of all, how much, like, even though she spent years with these families, how little they knew about her. How most of them thought she was from France, but really she was, like, her family, she does have ties to France, but she herself wasn't born in France, and she only would visit there and things like that. And so people, basically, because she was very private, people kind of, like, filled in the gaps, and sometimes their assumptions were incorrect. And then also, little by little, you start to find out that even although she was a great photographer, she maybe not the greatest nanny. Or that she had a dark side. to
Right, they
her,
build her
essentially.
likability in the beginning, and then you slowly find out that,
Yeah, and sort of like her eccentricities and like her like also would kind of like push the families to the limit. Sometimes like there was a family that she was really felt part of the family and they really cared about her, and I think she wanted to be part of the family according to the mother who's interviewed. But her eccentricities just got to be too much even for them, even though they had a lot of affection for them. Eventually they just had to kick her out because her hoarding was getting out of control and she would flip out if they tried to throw anything out, things like that. And then towards the very end, the kids who were nannied, like a few of them were kind of abused by her or tormented or kind of messed up or neglected.
Believe that they were like,
Right.
like, because again, I don't want to get too, kids can think things, and she was not normal, and she was
Right.
not doing normal things.
Yeah.
But the kids being punished, they can make things crueler sometimes than they
Mhm.
actually were. So because at the same time, like her living situation, she was living in a home paid for by two of the boys that she had nannied.
Yeah.
obviously
yeah,
she
yeah.
was liked.
There was something
Beloved.
right?
Yeah, no, I think and I think also it's just like I think kids are just like other people. Some of them you get along with really well and you like, and some of them you don't. Like you
Right.
just
And
like
you just have to abuse them.
exactly.
I mean, like some kids
Exactly.
are cool and they buy you apartments, and other kids you got to
They're
abuse.
not cool, exactly.
Well,
No, but
they're
I'm
not
saying,
cool
like,
kids
when
need to
they're-
know their place. Like as a nanny, it's important to be like, you know what, you're gonna have a ponytail when you grow up, so I'm gonna have to say rude things to you about women because you really don't have a chance with them. So you may as well just like,
Hear it from me.
yeah,
But in the end, I thought, she was just a very interesting person. And I think the documentary it was an interesting, so I mean, she has an interesting story. Her work is fascinating. And the story of how she was discovered or rediscovered and how her work went from like being sold in boxes to now being like, she's like world renowned now is fascinating. And the way that the documentary was made, I thought was interesting. Like it being like I don't know how you describe it, kind of like a whodunit a little bit, like trying like this, making the through line, this search, and this discovering who she was and leading the audience through the experience that the guy who found her work went through. It's interesting. And yeah, but I think there's definitely some ethical stuff. Because I mean, he definitely, I don't know, like he sort of, the John Maloof character, like guy who discovers stuff, he paints himself as sort of altruistic, but I think he
Like
definitely
like a steward for her.
yeah, that he's just like, oh, I just want her stuff to be shown, I just want it, but like
And if I make money off of it, then
yeah, I think there's definitely like, he was like, this is a gold mine.
Right.
Especially somebody who's like wheeling and dealing, who's like always, like he talks about in the beginning how from when he was a kid with his dad, they would go to auctions all the time and try to find deals and all this kind of stuff. But I mean, he was also interested in history and stuff, so it's just a little bit.
yeah. But I would like to get
there's
more
some gray
into
areas
him.
there.
He said he was writing a history book of Chicago.
Right.
Like, are you a professor, or like what is his? Because he seems awfully young.
Well, he's
Yeah.
also getting sued by somebody who came out recently saying that they're her closest family member, so they should be kind of in charge of her estate.
Well, I mean,
Well,
to me,
which that
I
raises a lot of questions.
right. I personally think like if he does benefit from it, then good. I mean, so many. If she had been alive and had made a lot of money off of her photos, there would have been agents that were making money off of it. There would have
Yeah.
been, and the fact of the matter is, this guy for whatever his motivations are, he's putting a lot of
A lot of
effort into
energy.
this. Yeah, and
Yeah.
a
Yeah,
lot of energy in
but
piecing this
I
together.
think that this may be a crasser comparison, but think of like the dude who found the foot in the grill
yeah.
kind of thing, where
From a previous episode.
like it's
another one of my picks.
Another documentary that Julian brought.
But this is in that tale. This dude bought a grill, and there was a guy's foot in it, and the guy was still alive. He just was keeping his foot in this grill because he was hoping to like have it made
One
into
day
a
attach it?
memorial
What?
thing to like with his
Yeah,
father.
this is a-
It's crazy. So there's this big dispute about okay, who owns this foot? The guy who bought it and who bought the grill and it happened to be inside the grill, or the guy whose
Whose foot it is?
who used to be attached to. So that's the question. Well, because I kind of, cynically, I think of this guy as like he's a treasure hunter, and it's like
And he's a little bit of a showman.
because it also made me think of, and I pulled this up, the Henry Darger, that there was this dude who was living with these like artists in Chicago. He was like a janitor basically at a hospital, but he was the one that they found that folk art. He wrote his book. He had a book that he illustrated called "The Story of the Vivian Girls in What Is Known as the Realms of the Unreal of the Giandeco and Janellian War Storm Caused by the Child Slave Rebellion." So that's his book, and it's illustrated, and it's like little girls fighting other little girls in these epic battles. And they put it in like folk art museums, and they've made documentaries about it. And the two people he was living with, this like photographer and this journalist, he has no other relatives or whatever, so they took over his work from after he died. Like, I discovered this whole thing and manage his estate and make money off of documentaries and getting the work out there and putting it in museums and getting prints made. And that's something, the documentary for that came out like in and around this time, like it was in
2014-ish.
this prior to that, like this is like 2005 the documentary came out. And I had remembered like the Folk Art Museum in New York has a bunch of his stuff on permanent collection. They're like it's an
May it
illustrator.
rest in peace.
Right, he's an illustrator, so it's
Wait,
probably
the Folk
easy.
Art Museum's closing?
I don't think the Folk Art Museum. Well, it's certainly not in the same location it used to be
The
in.
American Folk Art Museum.
Yeah.
Isn't it on the west side, uptown?
Well, it used to be on 53rd, so maybe it moved, but it's
Yeah,
not
maybe
it's
it's
not where it
something
used to be.
To Lincoln Square. It's
Yeah,
still-
Lincoln
Oh,
Square on
good.
the west side.
Yeah, it's still open.
It used to be right next to the MoMA.
Yeah, it's right by. It's in Columbus Circle.
Cool.
That's where it's been for a while.
Well, it's closer to Lincoln Center, but
Yeah. So, but it reminds me of that as sort of like
Yeah.
who, when you pass away, who does your art belong to, and who deserves to be like. Honestly, if this guy really cared about just the art,
Yeah.
he would donate it full bore to a museum or to a historian or an artist photographer, unless he wants to become that historian, I guess. And this
Yeah.
is his way in, but
It definitely seems like it's not purely that.
it's not all 100% altruistic.
Yeah, but even if it's 20% not altruistic, even if it's 40%, this stuff wouldn't have been gathered in the way it was without him.
Yeah.
right.
Mhm.
So that's a finder's fee. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like whatever his motivation is. I think her work probably would have, like, if he hadn't championed it the way he
Yeah.
did.
Right.
I think it would have gone into obscurity, and instead now she's world
Right.
renowned. So I mean, I do think there is a positive to that, and I think it's more like it's just fuzzier in terms of like it's a little bit morally ambiguous in a
Yeah.
bunch of ways because
Yeah.
because she wasn't a part of the decision and
Yeah.
she didn't have a close relative who was part of the decision.
Mhm.
But I did a little more when you told me about the lawsuit. I did a little bit of digging, and he is being sued by somebody. But the interesting fact I saw in the article is that Mr. Malouf, so the guy who found her stuff, hired a genealogist to find heirs to Mayer in France, and eventually paid an undisclosed amount for the rights to her work to a man named Sylvain Jossot, whom
wow.
experts identified as her closest relative, a first cousin once removed.
That might be the guy that they show on camera.
Oh, the one
Maybe,
who
yeah.
Yeah.
has the
guy in France.
grandfather
Has her
photo.
mother's
The mother's camera.
Camera.
and stuff. Yeah.
So basically, like he was getting ahead of this thing, and he was trying, and I think that definitely shows somebody with some savvy who's trying to get ahead of this thing and who's trying to make sure he's cornering.
He's covered. Yeah.
Yeah, he's cornering this thing, and he's like,
Mhm.
and he's like, oh, these people don't know how to make money off of this thing, and I can, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it's essentially another photographer and lawyer named Mr. Deal is the guy who got this lawsuit going because he hired his own genealogist and found another
Potentially
person. I
closer
think he
relative.
basically
that's the real villain. Like, let's face it.
Right.
Kind
It
of, but
can't- comes
yeah.
out of nowhere.
Yeah,
like, not
exactly.
involved.
but at
Yeah.
the same time, like he sort of didn't like. I mean, he claims
That's
that
what he
didn't
claims.
like-
He
yes.
does. Yeah, sure.
He wants
So
to
I
make
feel
money.
like there's
Yeah.
another documentary in the making here
There's
over
something
the
in
battle
the
for
making.
who this will be. It's crazy,
But
yeah,
it's
so-
beautiful. I mean,
it's
that's that to me is my favorite part of the documentary, though, is just when they just go through a series of her photos. I
Yeah.
just think it's so
Oh
so
yeah,
lovely.
and so a lot of the photos were taken on an old Rolodex or Rolleiflex
Rolleiflex.
Rolleiflex camera, and I thought what's really interesting about that is that you can be kind of inconspicuous as you take these photos on the streets of Chicago and
Yeah.
wherever else she was.
Yeah.
She could just take like real snapshots of life
Yeah.
and
it's
without people noticing.
basically what it is. It's a camera that you look down.
It's sort of like a
You look down
box-shaped.
into. So she can wear it around her neck, and it doesn't look like, your classic idea of somebody shooting a photograph is them holding the camera up to their face and being, it's very, exactly what they're doing. This camera is one that you hold around your neck and look down into the viewfinder, which is on top of the camera, and therefore, it's a lot easier for you to just go snap without anybody even really realizing that you're taking pictures. But according to a lot of the kids some of the people telling the story of when she was babysitting them, she was just asking people to pose for these pictures anyway.
Yeah, I mean, but they did kind of show that there were and that's why I question the children a little bit, because they showed that clearly. Like,
Yeah.
you had two people who were like
Clearly
a
posing.
girl and a best friend,
Mhm.
and they both had
Different stories.
varying recollections.
Yeah, and that
about-
was an interesting bit of cross-editing. Yeah, that they were kind of
and-
Telling the same story but in different ways.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but
from different perspectives.
yeah.
Like one saying
She
would
never
just
had
take
her
them and
camera.
people would be shocked when they happen,
Yeah.
and the other one saying she would have them pose, and it's just this like pop 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 pop
and
pop.
I think she probably did both, and they
Yeah,
just each
exactly.
remembered one more strongly than the other. And I think and you can tell from the photos that sometimes she was sneaking the shots, and sometimes she
Yeah.
was definitely
Right.
looking them in the eye, that kind of thing.
Like the
so.
photos of the children crying were more like off the cuff. Like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna
Mhm.
get this really quick of you crying on your mom.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know that I have a whole lot more to say about it.
I have a few things to say. That first of all, this is in no way like don't see this documentary. I think it's really great. But some things that really bothered me is I feel like I finished that movie also kind of in just as much of a gray fog as of when it started almost. I really wish that at some point in the movie they just kind of gathered all their data and just laid it out. Like in facts, these are the things we know. You know what I mean? Instead of this like never-ending search thing, it ended up just at the end. There very little of it felt very solid. And call me old-fashioned, but when I finish a documentary, I want to feel like I've learned something instead of just been taken on a journey.
Keith, you're old-fashioned.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I counter to that a little bit. I think you're right in that it doesn't give that, but it may also be this like, posthumously, it's amazing we found all this stuff of her, but we're still like, to actually know who she was and who she is, this is just like a fingernail scratch on the surface. Like, we can't really get to the person.
Yeah, but it's
who is
string.
alive.
It's
This
a
is
string
just-
along. It's a
it's a-
string along thing to make it seem more mysterious. When meanwhile, I mean, the dude hired a genealogist. We know what her actual real name is. So like, what doesn't somebody just tell us? You know what I mean? They found out. They just didn't put it in the movie.
Well, I think what they're saying, because he had to go to he did have to go to certain extremes to find information, to find out, like, that's why he couldn't even find her while she was alive, is because
Well,
she
no,
just
I
didn't
get that. I
exist.
get that. I get that there was a journey to find this information,
And
and
they're
I'm
re-
fine.
they're
And I'm fine
recreating
with
that.
us. I'm fine with it being strung along. But by 3/4 of the movie, I want to know that these things happened at this time, and it not be like, maybe this, maybe that type of deal. You know what I mean?
I think part of it is that they're still not. I think the filmmakers themselves were still not 100% clear on everything, and they still had a lot of things they didn't know. But I think more importantly, by the end of the film, I felt like I had a sense of who she was, and I felt like I understood her and where she was coming from, kind of her relationship to people in the world, and kind of how and how she
wouldn't
ended
it have
up
been
was kind
nice
of
to
sad.
wouldn't it have been nice to get kind of a breakdown of the timeline of like she was in New York in the Hamptons at this time in her life,
But I
and
mean,
these are some amazing photos from that era. She was in Chicago at this time, and these are the families that she was with, and
I
these are the
think
amazing
that-
photos
But I think
from
that
that era.
I think that's just a different film. Like I think
No,
it,
I think
it
that
would have.
I don't think that would. I don't think that would have. You can still have the discovery bits, just at some point
So you
hit
like
this.
signposts along the way.
What
kind
Not
were
of?
you-
even
what were you
s-
saying, Kristen?
Yeah, sorry.
I was saying I think that the way they presented it was definitely a choice, and
Oh yeah,
it
without a
was
doubt.
presented in that way because that's how she presented herself in her life, and we definitely get more of a feeling of that from the way we get information in the movie or in the documentary.
I don't know if she presented herself in that way. The people that they interviewed said she did.
But that's all they
So
know. Like,
that's all they
have.
know, but it doesn't mean that those are the only people that she knew and she ever confided in.
But in
I mean,
terms of-
her friends in France knew a lot more about her. Her family in France
they
were
knew
just like, yeah, her mother was this. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's
but
just
they,
like,
they could tell you her like family tree, but they couldn't tell like
What
the
she was
fact
like.
that you couldn't just go and say, well, these are the people she's interacted with, like very easily. Like they only had so many ins to find this
Sure.
person. And
Sure.
And the fact that everyone had such a different idea of her, I think she was different with
well, it's
different
because
people.
80% of the people that were interviewed in that film were kids when they knew her.
Or
Some of
her
those.
employers to some
Yeah.
extent.
Yeah, but
I
even
think.
they like they're. I'm just saying that it was definitely a choice. It's an artistic choice that they made. I would have much rather preferred to get some more solid facts by the end. Yeah, I still think that you can have her be mysterious. I still think that we can go through the whole rigmarole of is it a fake French accent and all that. But at some point, I want to be on solid ground.
Right, but I'm saying
when I'm supposedly learning about this.
But I was saying structurally, it would be difficult to insert that. I mean, I think what they could have done is they could have broken it a little bit more into a timeline, you know what I mean, and then kind of put signposts, and then like kind of broken her work down into periods and all that kind of thing. But then
No, I think
it
at
just
the end you
becomes
just have
different
like
thing.
a quick kind of summary type of thing. Radiolab does it. This American Life does it. At the end, you get the kind of wrap up that all kind of like concisely gives you solid information.
I mean, I think they're following like an Earl Morris style where it's a multi-subject kind of thing, and the way they start with the like showing your cast of characters,
Yeah.
and then kind of going into their various impressions of this, their Rashomon look at this woman, or different angles and aspects of her. That's your setup. They set up their thesis of like who was this person, and that's what those people are answering or trying to answer, and then we go into this thing, and the only question they're trying to answer is using the fact that she was a photographer. It's not so much like what is the mystery, what are the facts, like she went to here, then to here, to here. It's more about let's build this person. I agree. I'm not a super huge fan of that, like of burying the lead kind of stuff.
And it just seems spoon fed at a certain point. Like
Yeah.
I'm cool with it as a device up until a point, but when you're halfway, when you're 3/4 of the way through the movie and they still don't know how to spell her name, it's just like
they really
let's just like put a marker down here somewhere and like,
they-
answer these questions.
They did milk it a little too much.
Yeah.
I mean, I think also generally another big problem I have is that the guy who found our work co-directed the film.
Yeah.
And probably spearheaded the making of it. Like he probably like found his co-director and was like, "Hey, let's make this movie." I really wish it had been outside parties and that
Was a part of the story instead of telling it.
exactly,
Yeah.
and that and there had been, even if he was part of a story, that there had been a more objective eye on him as well.
And that leads to
And
my
that would have been more interesting too.
the most important thing for me, the thing that was most interesting to me that I think was missing and probably would have been solved by that, is more of a like getting actual art critics in who didn't like say, "Oh, this is amazing," and getting the people from the MoMA or getting the people from the Met
Yeah.
Who declined
to
it.
speak about it.
Well, but the other interesting, they did kind of reveal towards the end that like it's because like the ownership
You ever know-
they
didn't
don't
get them
like
printed.
they don't want to deal with posthumous stuff because of this legal problem
right.
stuff.
There's that, but
That's
I don't
why
care.
a lot of people turned them down.
But I don't that makes sense to me. But what I wanted to hear them talk about that. Like I want to hear a discussion.
Yeah.
Like basically, this was a very one-sided
Yeah.
angle, and you have this guy saying this is art. Here are some photographers who say it's art, and here's this guy who says it's art. The only like fake let's say this and say this and like it's still a mystery was inconsequential is her like accent thing. And the only time they show that one guy is when he's like, oh, she had a French accent for sure, to go against this guy who they don't even chiron him. You don't know what his
Right.
deal is.
Yeah, he just
Who
pops up.
says like, oh yeah, I'm a linguist and that's a fake accent. It's like, and you've shown this guy before for what reasons? It's pretty like once you start to dig in, it gets a little sloppy.
Well,
Yeah.
it's not sloppy. It's
But
it's not sloppy. It's all very specific and like showmanship-y.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
the part that I
Well,
don't
it's a sale-
like is
it's a
that
sales
it's like I'm
piece.
being yeah, exactly. This is this an infomercial or is this information?
Yeah, it's kind of like now that it's like having watched the whole thing, knowing more, and reflecting back. I definitely like question the whole thing, and it does seem like to him this was just another outlet to promote the work and
Yeah.
to because the more the work, because part of
he
what
needs
makes,
funding to keep
Yeah,
it
and
keep this
as
going.
good as her photographs are, a big part of what made the splash was the story
Yeah.
of how it was, of this unknown
Yeah.
person being discovered is just as big is the marketing angle behind it.
Well, and honestly, when it comes to artists, sadly, that their artwork often does come secondary to their kind of
Their
tragic story.
sellability.
Yeah.
Like I mean,
Yeah, like Van
we
Gogh cutting
we
his
love
ear
Van
off.
Gogh, but
Yeah.
would we have heard of him if he didn't commit suicide when he did? you
Oh,
know?
we'd still be calling him Van Gogh.
Yeah,
Well, no,
like a bunch of cavemen.
No, we wouldn't have heard of him if he hadn't killed himself, and that then some savvy person could then market his work.
Yeah,
after
his brother. Or
Because the other thing that I
or like
found out-
that guy. What's his name? Kurt Cobain. Would anybody even know who he is?
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
The other thing I found out from the article is that the John Maloof guy was a former real estate agent, also not mentioned in the documentary. Like
Yeah.
Suddenly is no. I know some nice real estate. I'm related to some nice real estate people. So they're out there.
Yeah, I would. So yeah, my big thing is having more experts, like legit experts,
Mhm.
and more of a discussion of what is art, what is like posthumous art and posthumous photography. Because he stating his own case,
Yeah.
he lays out, well, these people had this, these people had this. So again, I wanted some like actual because
Yeah.
it is a gray area,
Yeah.
and there is no maybe real answer on it. But I wanted a discussion. I wanted
Yeah.
people to talk about like get actual art critics, not people who are like, oh, this is real nice stuff. Click, click, click. How many pictures did she take? Click,
Yeah,
click,
yeah.
click. Who
Oh,
am
she's
I?
got it.
Yeah, like
Whatever
oh,
it is,
Also, a
she's
lot
got
of
it.
this documentary felt like it was predated from 2014. Like
Yeah.
it felt really old. Like the computers they were using, like the
It
equipment.
probably took them a while. Like it takes a long time.
Yeah.
A lot of the time to make a documentary. And they often start small and then like get sprawly, or you the story keeps getting bigger. Or you find someone else, and so it just
fill in the gaps.
it can like documentaries can usually like take years to make, kind of like an animated
Even
film.
fake ones.
Yeah. So that's something too. Is this is?
No, fake ones are much quicker.
I mean, she shot. All right, but they should also discuss whether photography is an art form or not.
That's true. That's true. I mean that's the
That's
the
the
elephant
real
in the
crux.
room.
Yeah.
You know.
No, but more to the point that she shot like thousands and thousands of photographs.
Yeah, hundreds of thousands.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And they're curating and selecting, and they even kind of say like she got some of her own printed, but
But she wasn't
She
good
didn't
at
curate
printing.
herself.
Yeah.
she wasn't good at
curating.
printing. But they're kind of also noting she probably wasn't great at picking the photos to use. So it's
Well,
sort
I mean,
of like,
the same could be said about plenty of artists. They don't,
but right. I mean,
like we like people we know and love. We like different things than they do about their own work.
right. But part of being so like we live in an age where we have digital cameras and everybody's a photographer to some degree, in that they have the basic tools to start.
Woke
being,
up today and everybody was a DJ. Every motherfucker in the world is a DJ.
right with
everybody
a camera
hit
to
play.
take photographs.
To
of the
substitute DJ with photographer.
Yeah.
You know.
Mhm. and love with drugs. So
Everybody's a photographer.
everybody's a photographer. So and if everyone
So you're saying if you shot 100,000 photos, would maybe
Yeah.
50 be enough
Well,
to make
that's
a
the thing.
movie
If
about?
you
Yeah,
took
like 10 out of those that you took by accident would be art.
well, that's the thing. Yeah, if you picked up my hard drive and there were 300,000 photographs on my hard drive, and you said to yourself, he was just not a good curator, but he was a damn fine photographer based on these 500.
I'd be
photos.
saying like, how did he get all this freaking porn on his computer?
That's right.
Well, I don't know. I'll just say like
But why are there all squirrel heads on it? Where did he find the time?
there's definitely there are a lot of
No, that's art.
I've looked at a lot of her photos online, and like even if though she took 100,000, like they're definitely not photos that were taken by accident.
Yeah.
No, I'm not saying she like dropped the camera and a photo came out.
I'm just saying I think she was talented. Like I followed some street photographers on Instagram.
I mean,
and-
I just follow street photography.
on the street.
It's really easy.
I photograph
you just
street
see a-
photographers.
Yeah.
You just see a dude with a
While
camera
they
and just
sleep.
walk 5 steps behind him.
I'm a bed photographer.
And I don't often see photos that are
That
are
engaging.
that compelling. But it's true. Maybe if I just picked the top 100, maybe I don't know.
Well, that's what I mean. Like, I'm not saying she isn't an artist. I'm putting it out there that if someone hoards 1,000 newspapers, you know what I mean? Does that make them a newspaper collector, or does it make them a hoarder? If someone takes 300,000 photos because they have a compulsion and they just have to photograph everything, like
But she didn't.
Well,
she
I
didn't
think-
take pictures of her food and stuff. You know? what I
No,
mean?
but she took pictures of garbage cans, and every garbage
That's
can
true.
she passed. She took pictures. How many rolls of film did she shoot of that kid who got hit by the car? And how many of those? Again, there's a second level to that, which is you can take the
Which
shot and
is
frame the shot.
photography
Well, I think-
art.
Well, no. Well, but part of making it art is being able to choose the photographs that you take that actually be like which are the ones that work and which are the
Well,
ones.
part
that
of what's not being said and part of why her work is more important is because of the time period and the idea of photography during the time period.
Yeah.
It was like you took photographs on Easter of your family. You didn't take photographs of everyday things and people on the street. And it's not
Especially
like
if
now
you're
where
a
everyone
woman.
takes photos
Right.
of everything.
Yeah, like she was definitely like a weirdo then, and
Mhm.
and it would be much more normal or understood today.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you look at like Stanley Kubrick always had one of those same cameras around his neck, and Larry Schwartz always had one of those cameras around his neck. But I mean, those are people who are plying a trade and doing their thing, and they're
Mhm.
And she was a nanny who took photographs on the street.
Right.
And she was a nanny to kind of to free up her life so she can go out and walk around and take
Mhm. Right.
photos. That was I thought was kind of a neat aspect of it. It's like that she
And-
made that choice for that reason.
Yeah, and she didn't even let that work get in the way of her photography.
So you got hit by a car? Let me take some pics.
I love
a
that she would just
Nightcrawler
I
shit.
love that she would just like drag the kids to like
slaughter
the bad part of town or whatever to take
forgot about
pictures
that.
or the slaughterhouses, and then after a while the parents would be like, no, you can't do
You
that.
can't take our kids here.
Which is another like the Harry Jarger guy is another one with like antisocial stuff and like whose mind was going. It was interesting to see her subject matter and see what she was saving in those articles, like
Mhm.
what she would fixate on. And it also gives a different, you look at Gordon Parks and he's doing like he's showing the working person in their environment and like you get quotes in the thing about it's quotes of a quotes about the poor
Mhm.
from like her like identifying with the poor, but a lot of her article or a lot of the articles she's saving are about murders and like
Yeah.
gross sick things. And so it's like, is she a crime photographer in terms of like she's photographing the filth, or is she a photographer of the people, like a street photographer?
I think I mean, from what was presented, she seemed like she was a documentarian. She was
Yeah, but she had
documenting
a-
life.
but she
She
had
would
an
go out
eye.
and she would be documenting people's conversations in the grocery store. She was documenting when she heard there was this murder of a nanny. She was going and
Sugar
taking
nanny, yeah.
pictures and taking film there.
But she has a
I think
perspective and
she
an
had
eye.
a dark world view, and she
Cynical.
focused a lot on the negative in the world, and kind of like one person in the film
she had
says
a
that
lot
she's
of
like,
negatives.
see
Yeah,
see
a lot
how
of
bad the
negatives.
hey see how bad what an ugly screwed up place this world is.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, but she was
Then
also
they
finding the
imply-
beauty in it by,
Yeah.
there's a lot of, I feel like
Yeah.
a lot of those pictures of the children were just so
Mhm.
angelic and lovely. And
Filthy.
But yeah, I think it is interesting though, this idea of curation, and like I would be curious to get to see all of like way more of her, like an unfiltered view of her stuff and get a sense of how much it's
yeah, but that wouldn't
crafted
be
and not
fair
crafted.
either because
No, that's
every
true.
photographer uses probably
But
1%.
there are other famous photographers who didn't like
Edit their own
worked
stuff.
with curators. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Even
Well,
though
I
they
mean,
did it
even
in their own lifetime.
filmmakers, the best filmmakers trust their editors. That's just the way it is. It's just the best directors have this editor that they know and love and work with.
None of that's art.
I read somewhere in art school.
So what do you think, Kristen? Is photography art?
Or is it just
I-
fart?
I think it's art.
Or is it so like non-subjective that it can't be considered
It's-
art?
it's
It's
just
just
an ob-
reporting.
It's just an objective click.
Yeah.
You're just a lens.
It's just the capturing of a moment. It's without any guidance.
Right. Like a fly lands in the frame, you take a photo. You don't get to choose whether that fly is in there or not.
You don't get to be in the mind of the fly.
Right.
Yeah.
What if you paint a painting and then take a picture of it, and that's what you choose to put in the museum?
That's basically like old-fashioned Photoshop. That's fine.
What if you then run Photoshop on the photo of the art?
Then you are an illustrator.
Can you use dodge and burn tool?
Yeah, as long as you use clone stamp.
Nah, I'm all about that emboss.
Yeah, little glow filter.
Yeah, put some glow on there.
Kristen,
Kristen's not amused.
she's like, what is happening?
It's like, hey, it's time to go home.
Do you,
Okay, is finding old stuff in auctions, is that art?
He has
It
an
is
eye.
not.
He has the ability
It's
to
not
find
art.
the price of a thing just driving down the road. It just everything has.
That was
I
an-
could
that
see
was
it
an
from
interesting
a mile
statement,
away. He
yeah.
was like, I see it from a mile away. I know if it's worth something.
I'm just waiting for this guy to show up on like one of those American Pickers type shows, or
American.
the one where they actually buy storage
Yeah.
units, Storage Wars or whatever.
Yeah,
You know, stuff that's on the History Channel and
right. Other realistic.
yeah, A&E.
Anyways, that was my pick.
Good pick.
This
Jules.
is a
So
really
where-
great
Yeah.
pick,
where can
really
people
interesting.
Watch it.
Yeah, multi-layered. They can watch it. It's streaming on Netflix, and I'm sure also other places. But you know, it's free on Netflix, so why not
Alright.
watch it there?
Hey man, you know what else would have been useful is
it's free
for
if you
him.
subscribe to Netflix.
If
which
that
costs
dude had
money.
talked about where he got the 8mm film developed, because those were so beautiful. Like, where the heck did he get that developed that they were in such good shape? The colors were so vibrant.
I don't know, man.
Yeah,
You're
I
gonna
don't
have to email him,
yeah, I'm gonna do it.
tweet him. He's on Twitter,
Oh, good.
so you can tell him, what you think of him.
Yeah. Would you guys buy one of her prints?
No,
Depends on how much.
no, because I can just look at him online for free. Yeah,
Probably not.
I would if they weren't super expensive.
$50.
Is that what he said?
That's what I said.
I'd buy 4 of those prints for $50. Yeah, they're
Wow.
so beautiful.
Yeah, and then flip him on eBay. Nice.
yeah,
Boom.
Nice.
She's dead honest.
art market.
No, wait. No, eBay's full of scammers.
Oh yeah. Don't do that. You
Just
probably
do,
sell them
just
to a
do
bot.
Craigslist.
Have
you
you
can look
guys-
him in the eye.
Have you guys ever bought or like come into possession of something like this?
Like old stuff.
Like, have you guys ever bought old stuff?
I will say, my father passed away earlier this year, and there was some piecing together and some like detective work going on with some of the things. I mean,
Still
he
don't
did,
know his name.
Did you find some nudie pictures?
no, but we found boxes of tons of old documents, and my father was a songwriter, and there's just mountains of lyrics and things that are going to be hopefully eventually put together.
He's
Are we
going to
gonna
be
do-
posthumously famous.
Are we going to do Oak Ridge Road? Put some of those songs down on record?
What's Oak Ridge Road?
That's our Mermaid Avenue for your dad.
Frank Owens Drive.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's where my dad lived. No,
Frank
well, that's where I grew up, actually. He lived on J. Vesby.
Oh, J. Vesby.
J. Vesby
There
Road.
it is. Volume 1 through 7. All right. Yeah. We all good? Any
But yeah,
last words?
I
Any
did
last thoughts?
buy old photos and stuff when I lived in Berkeley, and there were
Mm.
some affordable antique stores just because I thought they were cool and fascinating.
What happened to them?
I don't know. I'll probably throw them out eventually.
So a buddy of ours we used to work with, he's a super talented storyboard artist, is also just an amazing street photographer. Singjun, he's out there. He's really good. I don't know if you guys follow him on Facebook, but his photos are out of this world.
I agree. He's good. Christian, what about you? Have you ever bought old stuff?
Oh, I have bought some old stuff at some flea markets.
Did you ever have to fight with the family about who actually owned it?
No, I don't think anything that I purchased was worth worth much.
I only buy new shit. I don't know what you guys are doing. You get bed bugs.
It's true.
Shoes. That's what they don't talk about. Ooh. Real time corner. Here it goes.
Oh boy.
Let's
Guys,
hear
this is it. So our exterminator came in, like, because we do monthly extermination stuff in the building, and he saw like my board games or whatever, and he's like, "Oh, you're a collector. What do you collect? Oh, I collect cards and da da da." And so he starts telling us this whole tale where there's this dude, like an old vet, who had I think
Like
World War II,
veterinarian
like
or veteran?
like a veteran of foreign
Okay.
wars who had, I think it's World War II or something, like an older guy whose house was like stacks and stacks of stuff and had bed bugs, real bad.
That's so
Oof.
gross.
Right?
Mhm.
So he's like, exterminator, he's coming in, gonna clean this guy's stuff out, and they're going through it, and it's like bags and bags of old cigar and like cigarette baseball cards and comics and card collections and all this stuff, like boxes and bags
Nerd
of stuff.
dreamland.
Nerd dreamland, like
Yeah.
old baseball cards, all kinds of stuff. And they're
It's
like,
all infested.
it's all infested. And he's cleaning it out. out. So he's an exterminator. He knows how to deal with this stuff. And some of the stuff they're throwing out, but then the guy's like, he's helping him out. He's getting them all cleaned out. And he's like, you got to clean this stuff out, or you got to like do it through the whole process. And he's like, just throw it away. I don't need it. He's like, this is worth something. You could sell this. And our exterminator's got like a thick like accent, very New York. He's like, you can sell this stuff. What are you doing? And so the guy's like, you can have it. So he gives him these garbage bags full of cards, and he takes them home. He starts going through them.
And he gets bed bugs.
Yeah.
Well, no, he's an
Everybody
exterminator.
in this building gets bed bugs.
He knows how to
And
not
then bed
get
bugs
them.
across New York.
He deals
Uh-huh.
them.
Yeah, and bed bugs just like die when they jump on
Yeah,
them.
yeah. He's
'cause
so
it's,
covered
like,
in
pumped
poison.
full of chemicals.
He sweats poison. He has like the third eye, and you can spot him now.
In fact, when he put it down in his house, you could see the trail of bed bugs like walking out.
And he
Yeah.
brought them into John's apartment.
Yep,
and was
totally.
like, oh, these board games.
I can't be around this exterminator. Finally.
Hey, wait, let him finish the
Yes,
story.
yes,
So he takes some of these cards, and he's like, these are worth, like, he takes one into a antique store or whatever, or pawn shop, and is like, how much, like, just out of curiosity, how much would you give me for this? And the guy looks at it and goes, 1 second, goes in the back, comes back out front with another guy, and they're like, we'll give you $2,000
Wow.
for one card. And he's like, okay. And so he does that, and then he starts thinking, wait, these guys are then marking it up and
Yeah.
selling it for how much more? 7,000 maybe. So he goes on to eBay.
I've
and
seen
starts
that Pawn Stars show. That's
He's-
exactly how they do it.
So he gets into this world of like selling these things on eBay a little bit, and he's like,
And he finds all these bots
yeah.
that are trying to scam him.
This is probably even before that, but he starts making like loads of money selling sets of like 9 cards for 20 grand.
Wow.
Like old, like turn of the century cigarette cards and all kinds of stuff like that. And he tells this old guy like, hey, look, I'm making all this money off this. You sure you don't want them back? And he's like, no, don't worry about it. In fact, like take some of this other stuff out. And so he's like, helps him. He
And
actually
he's like scratching.
Yeah,
In fact,
exactly.
take it out. I'm still infested.
So, but he takes the guy and like gets him cleaned up. Like he's got diabetes real bad, isn't taking care of himself. Like
Takes him to the hospital.
takes him to the hospital, gets him like all sorted. Like they're like, hey, are you his son? And they're like, he's like, no, I'm just his exterminator. And the doctors are like, what are you again? Here, come here, tell him who you are. Like this whole, becomes a whole thing that this exterminator's helping this like old veteran. And so, they kind of have a relationship. He buys him like some TVs, keeps him happy and healthy. He likes some girl, so he like the old man likes a lady. So he's an old gross dude who doesn't take care of himself very well. But the guy's like, I bought him like real expensive tickets to see the Yankees like front row or whatever. So whatever, he's all these cards, and he says he still has a bunch of them. And the dude passes away, and the guy and a lawyer comes to this guy, and they like hang out. Like they've created a friendship or whatever. You spend time with him.
the exterminator.
Exterminator and this old man. And the exterminator, the lawyer comes to his door and is like, this guy's passed away. I'm sorry to tell you this. And he's left you this storage locker and a bunch of this stuff. And he goes to the storage locker, and it's floor to ceiling comics and books and all this stuff, like just a massive collection. I think that this dude, the old man, used to own a store or two and like had a collectible store, and just at a certain point fell out of it and just kept storing it at his house, and his house became an infested store. So does that make you itch? Is it gross?
I would say that I bet it came to a relief to him when he would go into the storage place and not the
Right,
dude's house
exactly.
anymore. He's like, I don't have to flick the carcasses of dead bugs off of this stuff before I sell it.
So he calls this dude's son and the wife of this, like the daughter-in-law or whatever, is like, they don't talk. They haven't talked in like 20, 30 years. And he's like, no, he's going to want to see this stuff. He should come up. And he talks to him. The guy's like, look, it's fine, whatever, do what you want to do. And he's like, no, look, you're going to come up. You're going to look at this. I'm going to buy you it. And he buys him a ticket to come up and get the stuff out of the storage shed. And the guy takes it and like later sends him a check for like $25,000
Wow.
for helping him deal with this stuff, for giving it back. And so, but he still has these cards, and he says when he wants to go on a vacation, if he needs a little more money, he'll just go into his like card thing, look it up on eBay, and sell it for
Wow.
a thing, and that's what he'll. So that's buying old stuff.
Does he
corner.
go to the internet, or does he go onto the back pages of his old Wizard
Well,
magazine?
now he's saying he has like there are people he knows who will collect stuff. Like they'll.
So he
call
goes
him,
to them
yeah,
first.
Yeah.
That's cool.
But he got deep into that world of collecting. So.
Wow.
But that's buying old stuff corner.
Yay.
Buying old stuff corner.
So what I would do is find an old woman who's a real good photographer.
Befriend her.
Yep. Find boxes of her stuff.
Convince her that you're an exterminator.
Yep. and just casually lean on a stack of newspapers that just so happened to fall on her and smush her in her bed, and now that's really sad. And then go to an
It's
auction and buy
tragedy.
her stuff.
Yeah, it's good
Put it
thinking.
in a thing.
And then exterminate her collection.
Yeah. Give her newspapers to a guy so he can paint his house.
All right.
All right, everybody. Thanks,
Would be a
Jules.
mistake.
Yeah.
Good pick.
Of course, she would have hated every minute of it. She would never have let this happen.
She had some compulsive behaviors.
She was a pack rat.
I asked her what she did. Her answer was, I'm sort of a spy.
We would say, "What's your name?" Miss V. Smith. There's a piece of the puzzle missing.
As she was photographing, she was seeing just how close you can come into somebody's space. That tells me a lot.
There are many possible answers, such as hard work.
Feel I'm alone in this whole of existence. I know it takes time, but I'm losing my persistence. The distance is too far to fetch, so I sketch on pages and hope that some catch the thoughts of my inverted worded music. No trial and error, just emotion when I do this. Focus on each beat, more so than you're wasting time in front of your television. Maybe I'm
Everybody, thanks for listening to the final in our Lost and Forgotten episode. I was one of your hosts, John Holt. You can find me on Twitter at Lord Joho and on Instagram at board_ghost. Keith, where can people find you?
Earthlingkeith.com. How about you, Jules?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at BeautifulJules. And how about you, Kristen?
You can find me on Instagram at Kristen Sherm, KRISTNSHERM.
And where's Crinstagram, dude?
I don't know what that is, but
But it's an
Crinstagram.
awesome
Mhm.
app. We don't know what it does, but it's awesome.
No, it's like she brings you messages.
Oh.
Crinstagram.
She rides up on a motor scooter?
Yeah. Crinstagram.
Kristen
Go fuck
Graham.
yourself.
Kristen Graham for John Holt. Kristen Graham for John Holt.
I'll side for that. Go fuck yourself. No. Got me again.
But hey, before we go, Kristen, what was new to you this week?
Besides delivering messages for Crinstagram.
new to me again is a book that I recently reread called The Glass Castle. And they're making it, and the reason I reread it was because I saw a preview for it in the theaters. They're making it into a movie, starring Woody Harrelson as the father character.
As the
and-
king of the Glass Castle?
Kind of.
All right.
But it is a memoir written by Jeanette Walls, and she talks about her childhood and kind of growing up in this the way they were raised was like kind of a non-conventional family, and who moved around a lot, and they were on like the poorer side, and the kids were kind of on their own. But I don't want to ruin it for anybody. It's a really interesting book, and it's a true story, and I love the book. I hope the movie does it justice, but we shall see.
How long is the book? Is it like a really long read? Is it quick read?
No,
Is
it's a fairly quick read.
Good, okay.
Yeah, I read it
Glass
again
Castle.
within a few days.
Like
But
two-
I think her
200
writing style is really
pages
interesting.
Kind of
Do what?
Like 200 pages kind of length or more?
Yeah, like 250.
Maybe they might be able to make it into
Yeah,
a good movie.
the trailer you showed me, it looks really good.
Yeah.
Oh, they've already got a trailer and stuff already.
Right.
Wow.
Did you reread it because you had forgotten?
I had forgotten about it, but it's definitely one of my favorite books.
Okay.
Cool.
Did you buy it
That's
again?
awesome.
Had you lost your first copy?
It was lost.
It was forgotten and lost.
Wow, way to tie this into the theme, Kristen.
Anytime. I did all the work there.
So who are the other actresses in it? Do you know?
Brie Larson's
Brie
in it.
Larson.
She plays Jeanette Walls.
And then it's one thing that I noticed in the trailer, because Woody Harrelson, like, I guess they can do this with male actors easier. He plays young him and old him.
Yeah.
And I think there's like a young wife and an old wife that are two different actresses.
No, it's the same actress. I can't remember her name right now, but she's fairly famous, and it's the same actress who plays the mom.
All
the whole
right.
time. Yeah.
Cool. I'm excited for it. Do you know when that
Well,
comes
I'll
out?
check it out.
August 11th.
Cool. And who's the author of
Oh, that's
Glass
soon.
Castle?
Jeanette Walls.
Jeanette Walls.
That doesn't give me a lot of time to read the book before the movie.
No,
Yeah.
well,
Have
it
you-
just
how's
sounds
the,
like it's
is
a
it
quick
on
read.
Audible?
I'm not sure, but you can
I
get the book
bet
on
it is.
Amazon.
I bet it's on Audible.
Yeah,
Cool.
Lots of stuff is.
Kindle.
on all the devices.
Cool. Well,
Sweet.
we will have
Yeah.
links to that
Check it
on our website, newtoyoushow.com. And you can also follow New to You Show on iTunes at New to You Show. And that's about it. And we're also on Twitter at New to You Show.
So next week we're talking about what?
Next week on New to You, we're going to go into a new topic, my pick is going to be Deep Space Nine. We're going to go into a new topic of watering holes. So go check out, I would say, the pilot episode, Emissary, and the episode from season 5 or 6 called Far Beyond the Stars, at least. And then any more that you can stomach, I would binge watch the entire Deep Space Nine before next week. Do it.
Yeah, all 7. Is it 7 seasons?
Yeah, 7 seasons. It may not be new, but maybe it was
New to you. Explosion sound.
Pitiful life is all about the music. This 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 pitiful life is all about the music.
With him together forever, without the limitation of time ever again. So the second coming of the Lord is not dead. They're two separate